Live from Rialto, California, Mark Flores presents Retro Collecting 101. Tonight's topic, what causes a retro collector to hang it up? We'll discuss that here on Retro Collecting 101. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another great episode of Retro Collecting 101. I am your host, Mark Flores. Tonight's topic is a very important topic to me. I wanted to make sure that I got this one out to the retro collecting community. It's a topic very important, and it's kind of can be relatable on certain to certain people, to us, maybe someone that you know personally, but it's a general topic that I want to talk about. It's what causes a retro collector to hang it up? This is a question I need to ask you retro collectors. Have you ever gave up a portion of your retro collection, and if so, why? I recently, myself, gave a portion of mine because I felt like my box games weren't really going to be appropriately displayed. See, when I started collecting loose cartridges, I started finding boxes for those same games, some of them complete, some of them loose. And I found them from time to time, and so I decided to start collecting boxed games. And after a while, I started amassing a bunch of boxed games to the point where they were stacking alongside my room, and they were becoming more of a obstruction than an actual display. So after that point, I decided, you know what, I am going to cut these boxes out of the situation and just decide to go loose carts only. So at the recent Retrospect event that happened last September, I decided to sell a majority of my boxed games. Some of them complete, some of them boxed, etc., etc. And one thing I wanted to make sure to mention is that I personally haven't given up all my collection, and I just enjoy my loose cartridges over the box games, and they're per my preference. But this goes into the topic at hand, is that what causes a retro collector to finally decide to hang it up? I've seen many a collector decide to sell his entire collection, decide to do a claim sale for his or her entire collection. And you know what? The main reason I've seen why is because either they've done it all, either the desire to hunt for games, the desire for looking for games anywhere out in the wild has gone. Maybe the area that they're in specifically has been scarce. Maybe it's a collection of all three. And most importantly, I think one of the main reasons too as well is sometimes the money. This is a very expensive hobby, and like I've mentioned before in several podcasts with Retro Collecting 101, it's a seller's market. Right now, in this day and age of retro gaming, you will find yourself hard-pressed to find a game that's good and inexpensive. There are exceptions to the rule. There are great sports games that are fairly inexpensive. But I'm talking about games like Earthworm Jim, Ninja Gaiden 3, 2, 1, Double Dragon, etc., etc. Those games aren't $5 and above. Anything above $5 is relatively expensive in some eyes, including myself, for a game. But due to the fact that majority of these games are still sought after, still in demand, the retro collecting scene has reached unprecedented heights. You're going to find those games to be very expensive. But with all that being said, where the desire's gone to hunt in your area, there might be a scarce area where you're hunting, and then the desire itself to collect games is gone. I honestly think there's one dominant reason why people hang it up, and that's money and then personal preferences. To people, sometimes times change, and sometimes hobbies change as well, and that's one of the strong reasons why as well. When people become fully invested into their hobby and they actually go to the point where it's like, you know what, I don't really need to do this anymore. I've seen a lot of collectors decide to hang it all up and actually go with an EverDrive, or actually hang it all up and start with ROMs on the computer. There's been a slew of reasons why, but it's sad to see that. I've even read many Instagram confession on why people decided to hang it up, or some Instagram user just decides, you know what, and writes a long little manifesto describing why he or she is giving up the retro gaming scene. And mostly, sometimes, even in some regards, it's even because they grow tired of how the retro collecting scene has become. But to me, I think of that personally as something that shouldn't associate with a person on an individual basis. I think the retro collecting scene should not apply to you personally, because this is your personal collection that you would put on display. That the outlook of what other people perceive of your collection or your video games personally shouldn't affect you, but that's neither here nor there. And even with me, as much as I hated parting ways with a majority of my box collection, I'm glad that some of it went to a better place. When I was selling the games, I sold them to several people that either had personal collections or were either going to resell them. But whether it's a fellow collector or me personally giving them to a store, I'm glad that they're going to end up eventually in the hands of someone that's going to appreciate them more than I did. Of course, I was able to get them for some amount of money, but I mean, at the end of the story is like, would I rather have them hang out in my room all day and actually not do me any worth because I would have the loose cartridge hanging around, or do I sell them for some gain? A majority of them I was able to overturn for some form of profit because of the demand of some of those games has increased exponentially. So it's good on both ends for me. It was more along the lines of a win-win. But one thing you got to remember too. So along the point of what I was saying earlier, if your collection is more of an obstruction when it's being displayed in its full glory, then it's time to give up that portion. There's always room within a collection to sift through the duds of the games you're not really going to play. But if you are a completionist, a completion of like a whole library kind of guy, then that might not be right up your alley. But if you want to trim the fat of the games that you don't want, I say go for it. There shouldn't be any issue with it. I mean, how many copies of baseball for the NES or Super Mario Duck Hunt are you really going to have around and decide not to trim the fat? There's many reasons for you to give up, not necessarily your entire library of games. Of course, there's games that you'd want to play for entertainment purposes, but there's a lot of games that you won't play, someone else might enjoy, or someone else might even use, you know? It's never bad to give up on a portion of or all your collection. If you have to, you got to do it. Don't hold any sentiments with any of the games you're going to sell, trade. At the end of the day, if you believe a certain portion of your collection is an eyesore or more unused than used in terms of like boxes and you know, boxed accessories, stuff of that nature, there would be zero regret on your part if you gave it up. You know, more than likely you might be able to sell it or trade it, however you may do. And people online are fairly good at being reasonable with the prices. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. This was a very short Retro Collecting 101, but I wanted to make that evident to the people listening live, hopefully. But anyway, I'm going to end this Retro Collecting 101 with the Game Swapper spot. And to let you guys know that on Saturday at the Finish Line Sports Bar and Grill in Pomona, California, Game Swappers is actually going to have Retrospect. Actually, not Retrospect. It's going to be the Bar Arcade, where you'll be able to play Super Smash Brothers and various other retro games all night for only $10, and you'll be able to have happy hour and drink specials all night long. But anyway, I'm going to end it with the Game Swapper spot, and this has been Retro Collecting 101. To let you know that this podcast episode is brought to you by Game Swappers. Come on down to Game Swappers, located at 4520 Holt Boulevard in Montclair, California, to buy, sell, and trade your current and retro video games from Nintendo Entertainment System to the PS4. Keep in mind that if you share any one of my podcast episodes through any form of social media, you'll get 10% off your entire purchase, or you'll get 10% more towards your retro game trade-ins. Follow Game Swappers on Instagram at GAMESWAPPERS. That's GAMESWAPPERS. Game Swappers. Buy, sell, and trade. For those interested, I was also going to do a podcast for the Mark and Andre podcast show on Friday. We were going to do a quick review on Birth of a Nation. We're also going to discuss the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers trailer reactions. And we're also going to be discussing the ancient astronaut theory. On the Mark and Andre podcast show, we go into the topics of film, entertainment, and conspiracy theories. It's a show unique of its kind. There's none other like it on Spreaker.com. But more than likely, I'm going to keep going with the retro collecting, the pay-per-view wrestling podcast, and the Mark and Andre show, all three of the shows for the time being. I apologize for the delay in doing Retro Collecting 101, but due to the fact that I had other projects and other things on the back burner, I had to go to those first and foremost. But other than that, thank you guys for tuning in to Retro Collecting 101. I'm Mark Flores, signing out.